This is a place.
This is the place?
This is a place. We want to talk about. This is a place.
Welcome to this week's episode of This is a Place podcast. My name is Nate, and with me is a guy who once applied to work at a cemetery, but turned down the job because he couldn't work the graveyard shift. Brandon.
It just doesn't work if I can't sleep between those hours. I did at one point offer to mow the whole lawn of the place we're covering.
And how long ago was this?
Well, I was at the time probably 12.
12?
So my 12-year-old brain thought that I would be able to mow a whole however many acre lawn for $100. I'm sure they would love it. It'd be a great deal for them, not for me.
But as a 12-year-old, $100 is a lot of money, right?
You think, yeah.
You would think, well, maybe not nowadays. Or at least when I was 12, it seemed like a lot of money.
All my money went to Mountain Dews in the vending machine anyway, so that would have been quite a good amount of Mountain Dews. But to mow a 122 acre cemetery, probably worth a little bit more than $100 a week.
Yes. Well, are you able to mow a lawn right now, or are you still working on your sprinklers?
Yeah, they're getting there. I finally covered up the main big hole about 6 feet deep. No, it was only 51 inches deep, but I thought it was going to be my grave itself. But I finally finished it and covered it up, so just a little bit more work to go, and we're going to have a green lawn, hopefully.
And then you can mow a lawn.
Then I can mow my lawn.
You can mow your lawn.
Just weeds.
You're not going to hire somebody and pay them $100 a week to mow it?
No.
No.
Don't even have half an acre.
Well, did you hear in the news about the prince who died?
No, what happened?
So this prince died, and when they found him in his home, he had like stacks and stacks of cash, like millions and millions of dollars of cash.
Wow.
And apparently he was trying to give it away, but nobody would return his emails.
Poor guy.
Oh, you didn't get it, did you, Brandon?
Was he from Nigeria?
Yeah, Nigeria, exactly. Well, I wish I would have returned his email now.
So where is the prince buried?
I'm sure he probably want to be buried here in Salt Lake City, right?
I don't know why he wouldn't in the coolest cemetery, the Salt Lake City Cemetery, right?
Right, but I did hear that he wanted to be buried there, but it was overcrowded. Because there was no plot to that joke.
It is a pretty big place, I will say that. So I know that. Do you know how many people? How many dead people there are there?
How many dead people are in the cemetery?
Uh-huh.
All of them.
Oh, man. I was going to... My one time to do my dad joke and you steal it from me.
Oh,
let me have my
sorry.
thunder.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
I didn't know you were going there. It's like, whoa, you just set me up with like a softball pitch.
Anyway, let's get into it. We did have the chance to go and visit this yesterday, and we were very privileged to have who I would call an expert on the Salt Lake City Cemetery, Mr. Chris Serene. Did I say it right?
Serene, but
oh, jeez. Chris Serene.
You killed it, Brandon.
I know. It's all
I would
good.
prefer to be pronounced Serene, but sometimes we can't be that fortunate.
Chris, thanks for coming on the episode, and also thank you for the tour you gave us of the cemetery. He had a really cool map that showed all the must-hit places within the cemetery, so we were very fortunate to have a tour guide.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me there, and thank you for having me here on the episode, and thank you for giving me the chance to visit the cemetery again.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the place, I didn't realize, I've never actually walked around the Salt Lake City Cemetery before. I've driven by a bunch of times, and even driving by, I never realized how big it really is until you're in it and walking around. So, I mean, I would have been completely lost if you weren't there, and it would have taken us a few days or longer to get the same amount of knowledge we got for the hour or so we were with you. So, much appreciated you tagging along or being our tour guide.
Well, no problem. Thank you very much for having me tag along.
Do you know where the best place to go for a walk during the pandemic?
Where's that?
A cemetery, because everyone is 6 feet under you.
Hey, there you go. Well, Chris, you've heard some of our episodes we've done in the past and already know we like to read reviews on the places we visit. Didn't think it was possible to give a cemetery a 1-star, but there's definitely a couple in there.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, he said, closed at 4:45 in the afternoon? Why is this place showing closed at this time of day? What a joke.
Cemetery closes, huh?
I mean, funny story about that. I sent both of you a message Saturday morning because I Googled the cemetery and was like, oh my gosh, it's closed on Saturdays. But actually, it's just the office. The cemetery's open, so.
Well, my cemetery, my wife and I have a plot. They called and said that they want to sell our plot to a new buyer. So our plots are in grave danger.
For a second there, I was thinking, man, you're like prepared. You're ready for this. You got your plot already. Aside from that, though, a kind of a mid-level review. This place said the place is rather plain. In spite of that, it's an interesting cemetery with many old headstones and graves. To that point, it is relatively a plain cemetery of things outside of Salt Lake. Salt Lake City cemeteries tend to be pretty basic from what I've seen. But you go outside of Utah, more like back east and stuff, they got some pretty cool, creepy cemeteries compared to what we have here.
And to be fair, our cemetery's newer, right?
Yeah, good point. But for the most part, the rest of the reviews are pretty good. It's sitting at 4.4 stars. I don't know if the star level in the reviews will deter you from going here if you choose to do so, but it's a cemetery. Like Nate's already said, it's dead in there, so.
I'm just surprised that people actually take time to write a review about a cemetery. Because usually the 1-star reviews on Google are people who are upset, right? Because bad experience at a place. But just hard to believe that people take time to write a review about a cemetery. So
people will take the time to review anything. Let's be real here.
Well, think about it. We're doing a whole episode to review. So,
oh my gosh, we're part of the problem.
We're part of the problem.
Well, going back on our experience, it wasn't my first time visiting the cemetery. I've been there a couple times before, but we probably chose the hottest day that we could go to visit it, and that was pretty miserable.
Yeah, it was what 98 degrees yesterday that we were walking through.
It had to be like that, yeah.
So, and no cloud in the sky, so no relief from the overcast clouds. Got our steps, got our sweat on. It was a good day.
Well, I'm going to default to the expert on this one. Chris, can you give us a brief history of the Salt Lake City Cemetery?
Sure. Let's see. We're probably going to have to go back just a tiny bit. As we all know, we celebrate Pioneer Day, July 24th, 1847, which is the day that the Mormon pioneers entered the Salt Lake Valley. Fast forward about a year to 1848, Mary Walls, she was about 20 months old. She passed away September 1848. And at the time, when she passed away, all the people who had passed away had kind of been gathered together where currently this is the place Heritage Park sits. That was kind of like I don't know how you would say it, like a pop-up cemetery, I guess you could say. Brother Wallace, he actually wanted to go and have a quiet place to bury his daughter to, reflect back on her short life. He found a plot where she is actually currently buried in Salt Lake City, near the front entrance. There was the first burial there, and Brigham Young took note of that and had designated the 20 acres that they were on to be the official like city cemetery, the very first one. So what they did from there on is that all the people that had already passed away, they brought all of them over to where the Salt Lake Cemetery is now, and that's where they started to bury the dead. So
yeah, I didn't know about that beforehand. You told me about it, but hearing that, I mean, I knew they had moved like houses of pioneers and such over time, but I didn't know they actually went through and exhumed bodies from This Is the Place and moved them over to the cemetery, which is a very interesting undertaking.
good joke.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. That's right. And then from that point on, Brother Wallace had become the first official sexton of the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Designated that 20 acres to be where the cemetery is standing now. I think it could fit about 200,000 people.
So it can handle 200,000, and currently they have 120,000 people there.
Yes.
So to put that in perspective, Lavelle Edwards Stadium holds about 65,000 people. Rice Eccles Stadium holds about 45. So you combine both of those, and it's still a little bit short of how many people are at the Salt Lake City Cemetery. So that's just gives you an idea of how big this place is and how big it's going to be, because you could fit another Lavelle Edwards Stadium in there.
Exactly.
As far as capacity goes, people-wise. So it's big.
Well, one thing about the cemetery, I don't know if it's just for proximity's sake or since they kind of started to bury all the pioneers in there, it's really a hub for prominent members of the passed away members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So you've got a lot of the prophets, apostles, and many other related individuals that are buried in here, which we saw quite a bit of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there.
And I think even as we were going around, we saw many people driving through, kind of passing through to see those specifically. For example, we saw what will be the burial place of the current prophet of the church, Russell M. Nelson, and he's already got a whole big memorial stone that's there in place. But I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, that was actually the very first time I had ever seen that.
In looking at some of those other ones, I mean, you'll find, how many did you say the prophets from the church are buried there, Chris?
Of the 16 who have passed away, there are 12.
So 12 of the 16 you're going to be able to find there. So yeah, it's a good place to go if you want to see a lot of those prominent figures from the church. You'll be able to find them there. But we kind of want to go over some of the other prominent graves we had a chance to look at. You already covered one of them in the Mary Wallace, the first one buried there. So I was really excited to see the one for Orwin Porter Rockwell.
Oh, yes. He is probably the most requested headstone to go visit in the Salt Lake Cemetery outside of the LDS presidents.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, he was a member of the church, right? But he kind of has a loyal following outside of the church. You don't have to be a member to appreciate him. I mean, they've even got an alcohol named after him, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he was actually pretty. One of his nicknames that people would call would be the Destroying Angel of Mormondom. So he was basically an outlaw and also bodyguard to both Joseph Smith Jr. and Brigham Young. And back in his days, he was just as famous or controversial as like people like Wyatt Earp or Pat Garrett, you know. And those are two pretty big names in the Old West.
They also used to have a restaurant in Lehigh, the old section of Lehigh, named Porter Rockwell, that we used to go back in the day.
Funny you should bring that. That restaurant is actually they actually just demolished it because they had some. That's on a different topic, but they demolished it. They had some like plumbing issues, and they reopened that in Ephraim.
It was the first one that we saw. We saw multiple graves that had this, but I found it quite intriguing to see a lot of money placed on, like coins were placed around his grave. And of all the ones we saw, that it had the most as well. I don't know a whole ton about that, but as you said, Chris, it was kind of like a good luck thing.
And there was also,
Yeah,
you already
exactly.
mentioned the bottle of his alcohol in front.
Yeah, no, I didn't mention that, but yeah, someone had put that there too with some flowers.
So I wonder if that has any meaning too.
They probably drank a little bit, poured some in the grave for him, and then
Probably.
They had a
flowers.
drink. They had a drink with porter, and
So going on to another one, this one, another intriguing member of the church was J. Golden Kimball, who was known as the swearing apostle. So I was
oh yeah,
So of course we had to go over to his grave and issue a obligatory cuss word, as we knew he would be pleased with that.
yeah.
right?
One of our we used one. Well, I still had like 3 swear words left over for the week, so I used them all.
Oh, okay. Good.
But it resets on Sundays, right?
Right. Yeah, it was a Saturday. Well, I didn't know. I've always heard about him, but didn't know a whole ton. So I did a little research just to find out more and found some funny stories. One point, he was speaking with someone and they asked him, "Do you believe that Jonah was swallowed by the whale?" And he said, "When I get to heaven, I'll ask Jonah." Jay Golden answered. The man said, "But what if Jonah is not there?" And he said, "Then you will have to ask him for me."
That's good.
And then one more funny one. He was in if you've ever watched one of the conferences for the church, they do these sustainings where they kind of, everyone talks about whether they support the person that's in charge as it goes down. And he was dragging on, issuing all those. Noticed people weren't paying attention. So then he said, "It has been proposed that Mount Nebo be moved from its present site in Juab County and be placed on the Utah-Idaho border. All in favor, make it manifest by raising the right hand. Opposed by the same sign." So then some people that were listening heard that, so they kind of laughed, and then that got everybody energized again. So he was a legend. A legend.
Like something I would do.
Tell us a little bit about Chris Nemelka.
Oh yeah, he's an interesting fellow. I actually have his website. I have his website pulled up, mrm.org. It was basically what we saw on his headstone. So as you saw, it had his name on there as well as Hiram Smith's name. Hiram Smith being the brother of Joseph Smith, the one that everybody knows about.
Right.
Anyways, he was born in 1961, and right here, if you don't mind me quoting from the website, it says, "Nemelka insists that while working as a security guard in the Salt Lake Temple on June 16, 1987, he was personally visited by Joseph Smith and told he was Smith's reincarnated brother, Hiram, who both Hiram and Joseph, as we know, both died in jail in Carthage, Illinois, but he still claims that he's the reincarnated Hiram Smith."
So interesting thing about this one is what I found is he's in the same plot as some of those prophets and descendants of Hiram Smith. And
he is.
There was a lot of controversy around him going in here, since you only should be in there if you're a Smith. And in the eyes of the family, of course, they're going to say he's not, right? But
Exactly.
He convinced one of the granddaughters of Hiram to either sell him or donate to him that plot. So he actually ended up getting her section of the area there and putting this in. And I won't debate like his claims or authenticity or whatever, but it was interesting to see. It's probably the only headstone in that cemetery that has a website listed on it.
And probably the only one I've ever seen with a website on it, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize you could have a advertisement in a cemetery like that. We really need to capitalize on that if that's a thing we can do. There's a podcast out there,
So we need to go buy some plots and put our stones on them right away with the advertising on it.
Yeah, we need to do that before, since yours are in grave danger, Nate, we need to act on it real quick.
Or can we be like NASCAR and sell advertising on our headstones?
Ooh.
Ooh.
It will pay for itself.
We might be tapping into some new territory with advertisements in here.
New business venture.
Yeah, there you go. So moving on to what I think are probably the two most prominent graves, maybe outside of the big members of the church.
Yeah, Lily Gray. Well, that's not really a name that people would know right at the top of their heads. But what she's known for is what's actually inscribed on her headstone. And it says right there, "Victim of the Beast 666." And the only thing I can figure out about that, the only thing I've learned about that, is the fact that, she died in 1958, and her husband was still there. And there are documents supporting that he might have had a few psychological challenges. Whether or not she was killed by the Beast 666 is up for debate.
Yeah, I heard it was something like she had some kind of a blood clot, and what ultimately killed her. But yeah, there's been a lot of urban myths about what actually happened, and people wanting to make more than it is. But
exactly.
I mean, what you found as well, Nate, just about the different stories people have from being around that grave, right?
Right. That's kind of one of the, like you just said, the urban legends of going there, the ghost stories, is that the sod around her grave can suddenly turn spongy and soft where you're standing. Winds blow up from nowhere, and wordless howling will send you screaming out of the cemetery.
I don't know about the howling or the ground, but I would have welcomed a gust of wind at that time.
Yesterday would have been fantastic. Well, when I got home and I was just kind of explaining to my wife everything that we saw there, she didn't believe me that there was a gravestone that said 666 on it. So, I mean, if I didn't have the picture to prove it, she thought I was making it up.
So I think something similar will be put on my gravestone, but it's going to say, rather than victim of the beast, it'll say victim of the sweets.
That works.
I found also so it lists her birth date as June 6th, and there's debate about that, saying her husband, Elmer, had changed the birth date so it would coincide with the 666 thing. So there's a lot of unknowns since it was so long ago, but we have some other honorable mentions. We found Jane.
Jane Elizabeth Manning James.
Yeah. So she was the first documented African American in Utah, right?
To enter the Salt Lake Valley, exactly.
And was there a movie about her recently?
There was. Jane and Emma, I think it was called. I actually have not seen that movie myself, so I can't put a review out for that. I have not seen that movie, but I know the movie's about her and her relationship with Emma Smith, the wife of Joseph.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
We also saw the grave of someone who was kind of the focus of a recent episode we did, Thomas Battersby Child, the creator of the Gilgal Sculpture Garden. And we saw, you said, I think one of 2 Medal of Honor winners that are in the cemetery.
Yes, we did. His name was Mervyn S. Benyon. He was the captain of the USS West Virginia during the attack on Pearl Harbor. And he was actually from Vernal, Utah.
And then I was also really excited to see the grave for Larry Miller, who's prominent, did a lot of good within the Utah community, was the owner of the Jazz. So happy to go see his and pay our homage to him.
Exactly. He and his family brought the Jazz up from Louisiana back in 76 or 77. If you get that tie-in, I mean, maybe this is just me saying that, but the Jazz, it's you don't really think, when you hear the term Jazz, you don't think much Utah other than basketball. But with the team being from Louisiana, and then you're like, oh, there's a connection right there. There you go.
If you think about it, we really should be the Lakers.
The Salt Lakers?
Yeah, the Salt Lakers.
Salt Lake. I've always thought, like, you could probably move the Saints football team up to Utah too.
Yeah.
Ooh, good point.
Or we could just be called the Seagulls.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
just kidding.
The Crickets.
The Crickets, yeah.
Well, I wanted to save the best one for last, and that is arguably the most visited one in the cemetery, as it is prominently known, Emo's grave.
Yes. Jacob Moritz, he is buried in the Jewish section of the cemetery, he being a Jewish man. He was actually born in southern Germany, Bavaria, came to the States, I think, about 1888 is when he came to the States. He came to Utah, and he was accepted by the Mormon community, even though he had opened the first brewery in the state of Utah.
Scandalous.
And I think at the time, Utah wasn't quite a state. I think they were still the Utah Territory at the time he came. And the story behind why he's called Emo's grave, he was cremated, but like his headstone's kind of like a obelisk thing with the door, I guess you could say. I'm not sure how I want to describe that.
It had like a window.
Exactly. It had a window. And there's a steel plate covering that window nowadays, but there used to not be a window, like a steel plate there. It was the reason is because it's haunted. People say that if you walk backwards around his grave 3 times saying emo, 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 while holding a lit candle, you would be able to like look through that window, be able to see his face.
His red glowing eyes.
Glowing eyes or something like that, yeah.
But I think now because they put that plate in that you can't look anymore, is that he'll start chasing you if you do it. So funny how things evolve over the years.
Exactly. But yeah, like if you take a look at the grave, I think one of you two took a close-up picture on the door. There's actually like a big capital like M for his last name, Moritz. And someone had scratched in the letters E and O around it, therefore getting the emo part. I'm not sure. To tell you the truth, I'm not exactly sure how that began.
I'll tell you my personal opinion on it. Utah teenagers who'd never seen a grave like that, because we don't have graves like that in Utah. So since it was so creepy and different looking, they just used it as an excuse to create folklore about it. But I mean, my parents went and did it too years and years ago, but it was my first time seeing it, and I've always wanted to see it. So it was nice to finally make the trip, see what all the emo hype's about. Did you guys in your research find anything about John Baptiste about the cemetery, or do you know anything about him, Chris?
I do know a little bit about him. Jean Baptiste was actually known as the town gravedigger or grave robber.
Yeah, he was a gravedigger for the cemetery, right? Exactly.
He was. I think at one time he was known as one of the sextons after Wallace was of the cemetery. But rumor has it he unburied tons of graves, stealing, clothing, jewelry, all that stuff. And I think after they found out he was exiled.
Well, Nate, did you have any other scary stuff that you found in your research?
We already talked about
Lily
and Emu, right? Emo, right?
That's what my mom would call it when I listened to emo music. She's like, she's listening to the emu music.
Emu. To me, it sounds like Elmo. Elmo's grave.
Elmo's glowing red eyes is what you mean.
Elmo's grave.
Elmo's grave. But there's supposedly a ghost of a young woman who roams the cemetery dressed in a white dress. But I think that kind of goes with all cemeteries, right? Everyone's, other thing people. White. Why is it always white? That's true. Always
Why
a white
not mix
dress.
it up a bit? Let's have like a yellow dress or a green dress.
It's probably what they were buried in, maybe.
Yeah, I guess.
And then people talk about that they'll hear laughter of children and like soft moaning sounds that seem to follow them, and crying and sobbing. What was another thing? And then people, I think joggers said they felt like somebody's behind them when they're jogging either through the cemetery or by it, and nobody's there. And I want to say, see if I can find it, that people say there's an old man who walks around along the roads, and that that if you drive through at dusk, you'll see him walking, but he disappears as your car approaches. Yeah, so probably basic stuff that you hear at all cemeteries.
With any cemetery, you're going to get the spooky stories, right?
Right. And the older the cemetery, the spookier, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've got some other in Utah that I think this one is historic, but I'm eager to check out the other scarier cemeteries throughout Utah. Well, since we're talking about a cemetery, I thought it'd be fitting. What kind of things would you guys put on your gravestones? I already shared mine, as I'd die by the sweets. But how about you, Chris?
For me, I think a good one would be something like, "He was just here a second ago."
That's awesome.
Or I'm right behind you.
Oh.
Don't look, I'm right behind you.
You might end up on a list if you did yours as that, Nate.
On a
You'd be
list?
the one everyone, the grave everyone comes to see, even though they don't really know anything about you.
Yeah, it's the only way I can get people to come visit me. So I wanna have some reason to come visit. But I would like to have, I like in the cemeteries the people that have the benches that you can sit on, because sometimes it's just good to have a place to sit down and rest your feet, especially if you're going to be in the cemetery for a while.
Yeah. I just always feel weird sitting down on those, almost like I'm sitting on the person. I don't know. It's just a weird thing for me.
Or it's kind of like the feeling of being disrespectful standing on a tombstone.
Yeah.
But I also thought too it'd be fun to have. I mean, after I've never seen it before going to the Salt Lake Cemetery, but like we talked about, the coins that people leave on the gravestones. So maybe I'll have a little piggy bank that people can put money into.
A piggy bank, so people can't take the money out of it afterwards.
Nope. And then, yeah, it'll be ready for me when I come back from the dead.
Oh man.
Zombie or the apocalypse.
I just want to have a really big thing. Like, looking at some of those prophets, they had huge memorials, big spires and stuff. And I mean, I made the comment to you, Nate, that what do you have to do to get something like that? And the answer being, you have to have money. Doesn't really matter who you are. You don't have to be famous.
Well, if I die with a lot of money and I can somehow get the copyright, I want the statue of Rocky that they have on top of the stairs in Philly.
I think you should. Don't do it's too obvious for you to do the statue of Rocky. Why don't you do the stairs leading up to the place where he runs?
So people actually run. So the whole cemetery have like the whole side of the hill that I own. That you have it's up.
Exactly. It's a lot easier to walk up than the bumps in the grass. You just go up the stairs and there you go.
Oh, so it's almost like I'm helping people at the same time.
And then you can prompt even more joggers to come in, and they'll want to run up those stairs, and everybody will take pictures of your grave because they'll be standing up on the top of the stairs being like, yeah, Rocky.
Or will they feel like they're being disrespectful doing that without the statue at the top?
If they knew you in life, they'll get it.
So, but I just think it'd be fun. Have the statue of Rocky, and they're like, why? Why is that even here? But then people don't have to fly all the way to Philly to see it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Well,
there you go.
I guess that works then.
So, but speaking of hills, I mean, we didn't really talk about it so far, but the cemetery is pretty slanted, right? It's pretty graded.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting that some of the plots were almost like on a 45-degree angle type of a hill, you know. So
can you imagine being buried in the Salt Lake Cemetery in the 1850s with no air conditioning or anything like that?
But since it's so old, a lot of those graves, like the ground moves, right? And so a lot of them are like sunken in and fallen down and broken off. I mean, I see those things and I think it's kind of creepy looking.
scary, but yet very Very cool. Oh, another thing too, since it is on a hill, and as you go up north, I guess you could say, towards the top of the hill, the view that you get of the valley is just amazing. It's awesome. So we did see quite a few people there having a picnic in the cemetery, which is
And there were
awesome.
hammocks too.
And people say hanging on hammocks, but I guess when you kind of have that scenery around you, it kind of almost has a feel of a open space park.
On a side note, like you bring up the fact that people are sitting there in hammocks in the cemetery. That is actually the very first time I had ever seen that in any cemetery. People just hanging around in hammocks. I had never seen that before.
Oh, so, and you've been there a bunch of times, right, Chris?
I have.
Oh, so we saw something that you've never seen.
Yeah.
And we saw a deer.
Yeah, that's.
We saw what?
A deer.
Oh, a deer. Which it sounds like there are a lot. There's a lot of deer that run through there. But
If it was in fact a live deer and wasn't like a ghost deer, we'll never know. Again, Chris, thanks for being on our episode and for giving us the tour. But where can people find your work and what you do?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be here again. Usually I'm on Instagram, Chris Surround Photography. Used to do a YouTube channel under Chris the Strider Dog, but I haven't done anything in that for a very long time. But I'm actually more active on Instagram, Chris M. Sirine, Sirine Photography on Instagram.
You know a lot about the history. We kind of just joke about everything, but you know the details.
There you go. Well, I look forward to working on projects with you guys in the future.
Yeah, it was great. I appreciate you helping us out with this one, Chris.
It's getting a little dead in here, so thanks so much for listening to this week's episode, guys.
See y'all next week.